Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. Tourists from around the world visit New Mexico to take in the culture and scenic landscapes and, of course, the food. A new book showcases the state's famous dishes as well as popular restaurants to find chile, breakfast burritos, sopapillas, and more. Please welcome Carolyn Graham. Her new book is titled New Mexico Food Trails, a road tripper's guide to hot chile, cold brews, and classic dishes from the Land of Enchantment. She is from Las Cruces and is the former CEO of New Mexico Magazine. Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony, for having me today. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, we're definitely super excited to talk about some food. I'd like to start off with, what was your inspiration for this book?
Well, let's see. I like to travel. I like eating and drinking, and I love New Mexico. So that equation worked out perfectly to just make for a really fun to write book. I think one of the things that's easy to forget is that there's so much great food out there that it's hard to capture it all into one book.
Now, you were the former CEO of New Mexico Magazine, a magazine that showcases so much about the people and places of New Mexico. During that job, was that something where you kind of discovered that you had a big passion for New Mexico and the dishes in this state?
Absolutely. I've always loved New Mexico food. That's a pretty easy thing to love. But being at New Mexico Magazine really got me out there and just reminded me how special our cuisine is, our agriculture is, our people who prepare the food are. So I'm really grateful for that opportunity, for just pushing me out there and making me travel more than I probably would just on my own.
Okay, now I'd like to talk about the book a little bit. Now you talk about road trips and food in New Mexico. What is it about road trips and food that just kind of go together so well?
Well, I think when we all travel, one of the things we like to do is experience the local food. And that really gives you a sense of the community and the people who live there, and what their influences are, what their recipes are, where they came from. And that's kind of what New Mexico is it's amalgam of all of those things. And I really encourage people to just open this book or a map and just kind of go like this and travel there and try the food, check in with the little cafes, the little holes in the wall, the places that you wouldn't normally stop. I think now is the time to really appreciate those places, and just get out there, hit the road.
Now you say now's the time. Are you referring to the pandemic impacting so many of these small businesses?
Absolutely. I think we've all, just kind of been sheltering in place for so long. We're ready to get out and have these experiences and just, have that face-to-face contact with people and try their food. And these places, they really need us too now. Now is the time. They've really hung in there, through all of these challenges, and they're opening their doors and they're ready to start serving breakfast burritos and green chili cheeseburgers and beer and all the things we love as New Mexicans.
Okay, now if you were going to suggest a road trip for somebody, where would you have them start in New Mexico?
Wow, that's a really big question. I think, my home base for most of my youth, of course, was Las Cruces. I grew up there. And one of my favorite places to go is Silver City. And I feel like there's an arts renaissance there, but there's also a food and drink renaissance that's just been evolving for the past couple of decades. The food scene there is really great, and you can, there's craft brewery as well as distilleries, and good food. And then, you just have that whole area. The Gila Wilderness is just such a really cool place to explore and a good place to work up an appetite. So that's one place I would recommend. The mountain towns are always great too. Ruidoso, Cloudcroft. There's really good food scene developing in both of those places, as well as beer and wine. And I just can't leave out the spirits because those I think we should really keep an eye on those guys. They're developing, they're up and coming, and it's a cool industry that's evolving in New Mexico. Up north, of course, there's so many great road trips. Albuquerque in and of itself, you could just spend, plenty of time exploring that city and all of its food. Santa Fe, not enough can be said about the cuisine scene there. It's really cool. And just, driving north to Taos, along the way, there's a couple of really awesome and beautiful wineries in Dixon and Espanola, those areas. So beautiful. The river runs through there. It's just great. And, I'm completely overlooking the east and west sides of the state. Those are also really fun places to just get out and explore. My husband is from the southeast part of the state, so we sort of unwittingly did a lot of road tripping in that area to the Hobbs, Lovington area, and people are really surprised. Carlsbad, there's 2 breweries in that town. There's a good food scene developing there. Roswell, of course, their art scene is off the hook as well. And I think when you have a good arts community like that, you also see a developing food and craft beer and wine and spirits industry developing as well. So I think you can suffice to say that there's a lot of road tripping to be done in New Mexico.
Well, we also have a lot of scenic byways that you could take to get to some of these places. Is that something that you kind of looked at while you were writing this book?
Absolutely. One of the places I would recommend, and I didn't discover until my adulthood, even though I grew up in the state, is the Turquoise Trail up to Madrid and that area. And there's some really, it's a beautiful drive, great scenery. And then you get to that little mining town and there's a great green chili cheeseburger at the Mine Shaft Cafe. That's just a fun little loop that you can do from Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and just back around. I feel the same way about the Gila. Driving up that way, it's very twisty, turny. You go through the town of Hillsboro. Mm-hmm. It's like kind of like a scene out of a painting. There's, tree leaves and stuff like kind of hanging over the highway, and you just pull over and there's a little cafe in Hillsboro where they have one of my favorite pies. I think they call it a bumbleberry pie. Wow. And they just kind of throw all the berries that they have in, and it's a great drive. It's a great stop.
That's along New Mexico Highway 152, I believe, which takes you from Silver City to Truth or Consequences. Am I correct on that?
Correct. Yes.
Very scenic trip.
It is.
Of course, we got to talk about the big topic, what the state's known for, chile. Red and green chili. Could you kind of talk with me a little bit about what you found so fascinating about it and how it's used in so many different ways in our food here?
One of the things that I think is really unique about chili in New Mexico is how we have so many different types of delivery methods for that chili. Of course, we have green chili cheeseburgers and that kind of thing, but we put it on everything. It's in our burritos, it's in our chocolate, it's in our bread. So it's just everywhere and on every plate, at every meal, and sometimes in every beverage as well. So you can't miss it. My dad was born and raised in Hatch, so I kind of feel like I have chili roots. And his dad actually ran a cafe in Hatch as well in the 30s and 40s. Wow. So, that was part of his legacy, was to serve people in New Mexico and in that community. My mom was a transplant from the Midwest, from the Indiana area, and she settled in the tiny little farming town of La Mesa, near Las Cruces. And she just from the cooks at Chopey's and other places in her community, she learned how to make one of the best green chili enchiladas in the state. So I think that that is our mission as New Mexicans, to just drive around the state and try all these different forms of chili, and how each cook and chef interprets it and puts it on your plate, whether it's in a burrito or in a beer.
Now, our official state question is red or green. What did you find that people in the state prefer the most? Is it different in the northern and southern part of the state?
You know, it's interesting. I've found that, I've talked to a lot of farmers, especially up here in the north, that grow chili. They tend to favor the red, which is really interesting. And I think one of the reasons for that is because there is maybe a little bit more latitude in terms of interpretation. You can, different kinds of ways that you can make it, and how much salt you use, and how deep, rich the color is, where you get your chili, whether it's Limitar or Socorro area, or Hatch or Espanola Valley. They all kind of have a little different ping to them. So that's one of the things I've found, is that, I think deep-rooted New Mexicans tend to favor the red, and I don't want to start World War III or anything, because of course the green is it has some sort of something to it, that when you get that perfect green chili bite, it's sort of transcendental. So they're all great, and we have the amazing option to order Christmas in this state, so that you can try your chef or your cook's interpretation of both, which I think is always the way to go for me.
I see. Now, I kind of want to talk about the northern part of the state and the southern part of the state. How did you find that the food is different in those areas?
Well, I think it's hotter down south. And I think that that is kind of where I've developed my palate, and maybe numbed my taste buds a little bit, so that I can handle chili from any kitchen. It's interesting. I feel like in Las Cruces, in the southern part of the state, sopapillas are ubiquitous. You don't necessarily find that up north. And I think it's a critical piece of any New Mexico meal. You've got to have sopapillas. You've got to have free chips and salsa, so that you can fill up on those things before you actually get to your meal, and then just walk out completely overstuffed. So I guess what I'm saying is I favor the South a little bit more, and that might be because that's where I'm from. But I mean, they do some great things up north. One of my favorite restaurants is Española's El Paragua. It's one of the things I describe in my book. I experienced a food high, and I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but
quite frequently.
Okay, so I'm not just crazy, but you have this, like, you finish a meal and you're just like, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life, and you just can bask in that glow. And El Paragua gave me one of those experiences. Their chili there is, family recipes, and they just do such good food there. So yeah,
of course,
just try it everywhere.
A big staple with meals in New Mexico is tortillas. Did you find the difference in the north and the south of the different regions, what they prefer as well with those?
I didn't really notice a regional difference with tortillas. I think it's important to always find the place that makes its own. Duran's Pharmacy in Albuquerque is one of my favorites for that. I guess if I had to kind of identify it, I would say, yeah, maybe the tortillas, they 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 value them a little bit more in the north. Like you see more attention to that, and like we're gonna make our own here. Um, of course, they do that in the south too, but I think I see it more in the north. You go to like the plaza in Santa Fe, if there's a art show like Indian Market or whatever, they're making the tortillas right on the street, and I, there's nothing better than a tortilla like right off the griddle.
All right, I want to talk with you about something that's very popular in our state, and that is breakfast burritos. What did you write about with breakfast burritos, and like what are some of your favorite places and some of your favorite burritos that you enjoyed?
Yeah, that's another opportunity for World War III, because as soon as you start talking about your favorite burrito or you're asking people, people get very passionate
Yes.
about their breakfast burrito choices. One of my favorite, again, I'm going to go to the South, is at the Santa Fe Grill in the Pickwick in Las Cruces. It's just, I just love the fact you can gas up and you can go in and watch the guy make your burrito for you, right in this teeny tiny little space. And just, he flips the eggs, he, puts it all together. You can see it happening. Um, Up north, there's a little former food truck that's now expanded into sort of a little kind of a shack space called El Toriado. And it has their logo is these two chilies that form the shape of a mustache. And they used to be a food truck, and you could tell, they were very popular. The line was always just packed. But that's a popular place, and that's often where we get our breakfast burritos here in Santa Fe. But
Now,
again, Duran's, I always go there. Those breakfast burritos hang off the edge of the plate, and they're amazing.
wow. Now I want to talk with you about green chili cheeseburgers. Many people have their favorites across the state. What were some of the best green chili cheeseburgers you've ever tried?
It's so interesting again that we have these New Mexico cooks and chefs who give it their own spin. And you would think, just meat and green chili and bread and cheese, it's going to be the same wherever you go, but it's not the case. So you really have to get out and try every single one of them. I really encourage that.
Was there any that
And
stood
maybe
out?
also have, I think one of my favorites is Sparkys in Hatch, which of course Las Cruces know really well. He just, his vibe and his love, he and his wife, the owners, for what they do and for serving people, has almost kind of a Southern quality to it. He's just throws the doors open and just is so welcoming. But he also, there's something really cool about being able to like just go out into the field and chopping something up and, or roasting it and chopping it up and serving it to people. That's, again, very uniquely New Mexican.
Yeah. One of the things about
And he just,
Sparky's that a lot of folks may recognize as well is the atmosphere there. It's very unique.
yeah, it is covered in all sorts of antiques that they've collected over the years. They have a great little music scene there. After the pandemic, they sort of opened that outside area, their parking lot. And that's a really cool place as long as it doesn't get too hot out there. That's a really nice place to sit and enjoy both of their products of their work.
Yeah, they also have coffee, I believe, and a really good ribeye as well that folks might want to be interested in. I want to move on and talk about something you addressed earlier, and that is the growth of the craft beer industry, wineries, and distilleries in New Mexico. Let's start off with craft beer. With this industry, what are some of the things that you've seen, how this scene has evolved in our state?
I'm so excited about the craft beer industry in New Mexico. It's, as a college student, maybe a few decades ago, at NMSU, I'm so jealous of those students that get to have those options that we didn't have. We were sort of Coors Light. So the development of that industry has really been such a great reflection of our creative economy, and just the desire to offer good product. And they do it really well in New Mexico. I think kind of our hub is going to be Albuquerque, although Las Cruces does great ones. Albuquerque is just overflowing literally with great breweries. And it would take, a good year probably to get a good sampling of all of those offerings. Santa Fe also has some really great options. But I think one of the things that I love about the craft brewery industry is that it reaches out to the rural areas of New Mexico and adds something to those economies as well. Truth or Consequences, Carlsbad, Silver City, Farmington, Gallup, those areas that are developing a craft brew industry, it's doing something not just for visitors, but also for locals, and giving them a place to congregate. Again, I think I mentioned that my husband's from the southeast part of the state, which is typically a little more dry in terms of having places that bars or cocktail lounges and places like that. But in the tiny town of Lovington, they opened a craft brewery a few years ago. And, even people who don't drink beer really like that space, and there's atmosphere there, and they have really good food. And I think that's the beer is, it's a good piece of that equation. It's not the only piece of that equation. So these breweries become great little community spots, where people can bring their kids and hang out and experiment with some flavors that they might like.
In Lovington, are you referring to Drylands Brewery?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now I've been able to find out about them through social media. A lot of breweries have been using social media successfully. How do you see that playing a role in the development of this industry?
I think that's really important to get the word out about your product. It's hard in those smaller communities, I think, but when you see it, I'm very attracted to those Instagram posts of bubbles and things like that, and it makes me want to go try it. But that also kind of helps people know about you.
Yeah.
And Lovington is a good example of that. They've got a good social media thing going, and excuse me, I think other small town breweries, I think they recognize that sort of marketing need and get the word out that way.
Now, wineries have been growing in New Mexico for a while. People have been drinking wine in New Mexico for a long time. What do you think about this industry and how it's grown?
Also really happy about that. New Mexico, I think it dates back, our wine industry, to the 1600s. So it's been around for a really long time. Our soil and our weather conditions are very good for growing grapes. But I think our wine industry, has been kind of up and down, and trying to figure itself out a little bit. And I think we've now kind of reached that point. We have some really amazing winemakers in New Mexico that are doing very creative things. They have these beautiful tasting rooms. Les Combs and Las Cruces is a good example of kind of that more European style of winery. There's some great ones around Albuquerque and up north here. And there's some really good ones out in the rurals too, that are worth the drive, up in the Farmington area and around Silver City. One of the winemakers that I spoke with in Dixon, who owns Vivac Wineries, she gave me some really good advice when I interviewed her. She said, anytime you see a small little sign on the side of the road that says winery up ahead, pull in, try it, because you might like it.
Now,
so New Mexico has been evolving.
Distilleries also have been evolving. So what have you seen in that industry? We just have a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, again, that's, I think, part of our creative economy, that has kind of helped feed that. And up here up north, Taos, sorry, I'm blanking on their name, but there's a Rolling Still, I think maybe is the name, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering it for them. But they have a beautiful tasting room, and they do these gorgeous cocktails. I took a couple of photos in the book. They are just super creative with what they're doing with their spirits. Same down south, Dry Point Distilleries in Las Cruces. They have a really nice cocktail bar so that you can sample some of what they're producing there. Tons in Santa Fe too. And again, it's that tasting room experience. It's not a bar. It's more thoughtful. It's more laid back. You can really kind of do some experimenting with flavors that you like and spirits that you like, whether it's agave or gin or whiskey, all of those kinds of things. They just are putting them together in really unique, fresh, fun ways.
Okay, Carolyn, unfortunately we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. Carolyn Graham, her new book is titled New Mexico Food Trails, a Road Tripper's Guide to Hot Chile, Cold Brews, and Classic Dishes from the Land of Enchantment. Where can we find your book?
Everywhere. Local bookstores. I really encourage everybody to go to your hometown bookstore, pick it up, and yeah, just read it, start eating.
All right, Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
And we want to thank you for joining us on Fronteras, a Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.